Hey everyone, today I've got your Dr. Sleep movie review. The sequel to The Shining is out, but is it as good as its predecessor? So as far as the story goes, Mike Flanagan directs this follow-up to The Shining, where I had very low expectations going in. Of course, I loved watching all of the trailers, and I love The Shining. I can't believe how many times you will not believe how many times I've watched it in my life. And I never read the book that this movie is based off of, but in the movie you have an adult Danny Torrance who is battling alcoholism and eventually comes across a girl who shares this same ability to shine, and that leads them on this journey back to the place where this all began. And if you've seen The Shining, you know where that is, and of course they've advertised it enough and used that as the marketing for this movie for those who have seen The Shining and know what that movie was all about. The things that happen in this movie are not comparable to what happened in The Shining, but yet Mike Flanagan, who also wrote the movie, does a good job at focusing on the tension that is built from beginning to end, and it's constantly terrifying you because you want to figure out, how is this all going to come to an end? Especially when you put these cult-like antagonists in the forefront. That's all happening without compromising the overall scary aspects of the movie. And I was really scared watching The Shining, and I've seen it so many times that, you would think you would know exactly what's going to happen at every turn, or you're going to get used to it, but me, nope. Not me. And that's the same thing with this movie, and I think that's why The Shining still holds up to being this great horror movie, because it doesn't try too hard to scare you. Unlike some movies nowadays, I still think about how movies, they like to compromise the scare tactics that they use, and they just don't care because they think people will get scared no matter what happens if there's a jump scare. The same goes for this movie, where it isn't trying too hard to scare you. So I like that consistency with this sequel, which looks equally authentic. Now, as far as the casting goes, you've got Ewan McGregor, who plays Danny Torrance, and I think he does a really good job in this movie, especially when he's facing multiple demons. Not only the whole thing where he's similar to his dad, Jack Torrance, played by Jack Nicholson, with the whole battling his alcoholism, but then you have to deal with everything else, all of the scary things and the monsters that kept on popping up at the Overlook Hotel, and he pulls it off believably. Rebecca Ferguson, who plays Rose the Hat, and she was terrifying to watch. I love her as an actress, and I think she does a really good job at scaring the bejesus out of me. I think she's definitely one of my favorite characters in this movie, but I also think someone who is equally impressive here is Kylie Curran, who plays Abra, and she's this girl who shares the ability to shine just like Danny Torrance, and she's really good in her role, and I was blown away by her because at first I expected her to not be this really good child actress, and I thought she was going to come off as really annoying, but I thought she was pretty good, and they invest so much time developing all the rest of the characters in this movie that it makes them come off as more relatable or at times sympathetic, where you actually care to see what's going to happen to some of them, at least the good characters. The things that I liked about this movie was that the supernatural elements worked perfectly. Mike Flanagan does have a history with pulling this off because he's a good horror director, especially when it comes to Stephen King adaptations, one of which being Gerald's Game, which I absolutely loved, and then if you've seen the Haunting of Hill House series and other movies that he's done in the past, I've just been a huge fan of his, and it was truly scary and suspenseful and really put me on the edge of my seat in the most unconventional way possible that felt natural, yet I was still pleased as a fan of The Shining. And hearing the constant heartbeat sound effects that, you've probably been familiar with hearing. And being a fan, I loved seeing the nods to The Shining pop up on screen. I mean, yeah, we know about the little girls or the red rum or room 237, all that stuff was just all really nice to see. And those might be the reasons you want to see this movie all together, especially if you were sort of skeptical about seeing this movie. So you definitely get that here, and even if you had to wait a little bit to see those things, you know, it was well worth it, especially with the Return of the Overlook, and because, like I said, this movie is fairly long, and it is all well done. And you've got, you know, excellent cinematography, and the editing felt almost consistent to how The Shining was directed, and the musical score was also nice, and it was tastefully comical. That doesn't feel forced, and I really liked seeing that here. But unfortunately, the things that I didn't really like about this movie was that the beginning was a bit slow moving, and thankfully it picked up the pace with the scares that were really, truly terrifying to watch. So overall, I would say that this movie, while I'm still going to be that fan of The Shining, and I actually enjoyed watching this movie too, I still think this was a pretty impressive film and a sequel to an iconic horror movie. So I would recommend seeing this, whether or not you have read the Dr. Sleep book. How did that compare to this movie? And were you fans of The Shining as well? So I would give this 4.5 hearts on the heart rate scale. So let me know in the comments what you guys thought of Dr. Sleep. And as always, you guys can subscribe to my channel. I've got more movie reviews, movie updates coming every week for a Trail Thursday video. You guys can also like me on Facebook and follow me on Twitter. And I will see you guys later.